beautiful and something that like we haven't seen before. So we found like the youngest baby I think has ever been on set.
Wow.
This was like a 14-day-old baby.
Justin Baldoni has just unleashed a legal firestorm against Blake Lively, exposing what appears to be a shocking new bribery scandal. This time, there were no polished PR statements or clever damage control. The evidence was raw, undeniable, and officially entered into the court record. Even the judge, who had previously remained composed, couldn't ignore the growing cloud of controversy surrounding Blake's camp. The turning point came when Blake's long-delayed deposition was finally set for July 17th. What should have been a routine step in the legal process quickly spiraled into a full-blown Hollywood spectacle. In a case already marred by drama, manipulation, and whispers of behind-the-scenes influence, Blake once again took an unconventional path. Rather than appearing at opposing counsel Ryan Reynolds' office, as is standard practice for every other witness, she insisted that her deposition be held at her own legal team's luxurious Beverly Hills office. Her reasoning? Extreme safety concerns. Yet no police reports, no credible threats, and no official documentation supported her claims, only vague references cloaked in celebrity mystique. Somehow, that flimsy explanation was enough to disrupt normal legal protocol. Legal experts across the country were stunned. The rule is clear. Witnesses appear where opposing counsel designates, no exceptions. But Blake seemed determined to rewrite the rules, citing imaginary dangers while crafting her own legal standard. This wasn't about safety at all. It was about optics, control, and protecting her carefully constructed public image. At Ryan Reynolds' office, Blake Lively would have been stripped of her Hollywood veneer, questioned under pressure, surrounded by cameras and forced to face a team immune to star power and scripted charm. But on her own turf, she could dictate the environment. Every angle curated, every word filtered, every moment controlled. That calculated move, however, spectacularly backfired. Instead of silencing critics, Blake ignited a firestorm of outrage, reinforcing accusations that she was manipulating the justice system while hiding behind privilege and polished PR. No Hollywood spin doctor could disguise what came next. Civil rights attorney Omar Ball appeared on national television and dismantled the court's decision in one cutting sentence. This is unprecedented. The sharpness of his critique, backed by legal authority, reverberated throughout the legal community and struck a deep nerve. In the real world, ordinary people can't afford elite security teams or shield themselves in designer law offices. They're required to show up, follow the rules, and face the truth. No exceptions. For Blake Lively, however, comfort triumphed over protocol. And what stunned observers most wasn't her demand. It was how effortlessly the system gave in. Court commentators from court TV to Law and Crime erupted in condemnation, calling it a glaring display of celebrity privilege. Blake hadn't merely bent procedure. She'd trampled on the very principles meant to ensure equality before the law. This wasn't about health, safety, or trauma. It was a meticulously staged power move, a strategic bid to maintain narrative control and protect her brand. Even inside a courtroom, in pulling off her power move, Blake Lively didn't just challenge a rule. She helped erode the very foundation of procedural equality. If a celebrity can hand-pick her interrogators, choose her own deposition setting, and dictate every comfort down to the coffee order, what message does that send to victims, whistleblowers, and working-class litigants who must brave intimidating courtrooms just to be heard? Then came the final insult. The judge didn't request evidence of any threats, police documentation, or sealed declarations. He didn't review her security logs or demand an evidentiary hearing. Instead, he simply rubber-stamped her motion, granting Blake's entire wish list as though fame itself carried judicial authority. In that moment, the courtroom stopped being neutral ground and transformed into a red carpet for privilege. The sound of the gavel no longer marked justice delivered. It felt like applause for power. But the echo didn't fade quietly. Ryan Reynolds, Justin Baldoni's lead attorney, erupted in response. He unleashed an explosive 87-page objection that landed like a legal missile, systematically dismantling Blake's narrative with the precision of a courtroom thriller. This wasn't a polite procedural dispute. It was an outright accusation that Blake Lively had gamed the system, manipulated optics, and weaponized her celebrity to distort the truth. Every page was loaded with timelines, receipts, and exhibits sharp enough to burn through the illusion of safety concerns. Friedman exposed the orchestration layer by layer, but the real damage came from the attachments themselves. Inside those filings were official documents capable of turning a high-profile lawsuit into a full-blown scandal. Among them, internal communications from Blake's own security team, emails, logs, and internal memos, all carrying one devastating revelation. There were no verified threats, no stalkers, no police involvement, and no recorded incidents of danger. Just vague, self-created fears stacked on top of carefully curated excuses. The supposed safety crisis that upended court protocol wasn't real. It was a PR mirage designed to protect an image, not a person. Friedman drove his evidence into the record like a weapon, exposing Blake Lively's so-called safety narrative as nothing more than smoke and mirrors. It wasn't about genuine personal risk. It was about protecting a fragile celebrity image that couldn't withstand the scrutiny of neutral ground. But the real explosion came next. The courtroom hadn't yet seen the dirtiest evidence until Friedman dropped his next bombshell. A leaked email chain between Blake's PR handlers and legal advisors, chillingly titled PR Recovery Event. Within those emails, her upcoming deposition wasn't framed as a solemn legal responsibility, but as a calculated branding opportunity. The notes read like a production brief. Talk of optics, angles, lighting, and narrative control, as if preparing a glossy Vanity Fair shoot instead of sworn testimony. One line stood out above all. It will be less aggressive at our firm, where optics can be managed. It was such a blatant admission that Friedman barely needed to argue. The emails condemned themselves. The deposition, once touted as a matter of safety, was now unmasked as a campaign of control. And Friedman wasn't done. Seizing the courtroom's stunned silence, he escalated in a move that few lawyers would dare attempt. He went straight after the judge. With the air still crackling from the PR recovery revelation, Friedman filed a motion demanding the recusal of the presiding judge, Gerald Michaels, citing undisclosed ties to Blake's former law firm, the very same firm allegedly orchestrating her legal strategy behind the scenes. It was a nuclear legal strike, an assault not just on Blake, but on the integrity of the court itself. Accusing a judge of bias is a high-risk, last-resort maneuver, but Friedman had clearly decided he was finished playing defense. He was now dismantling every layer of protection Blake had built, legal, personal, and institutional. Then came the line that froze the room. This isn't about safety. This is about silencing the defendant and staging a press narrative. There was no hesitation, no softening, just a cold, precise declaration that Blake Lively wasn't dodging danger. She was dodging accountability. And with those words, backed by emails, exhibits, and irrefutable evidence, Friedman ensured that the illusion shattered, and the entire world could finally see what was really going on behind the Hollywood polish. But the twist didn't end there. What began as courthouse murmurs soon erupted into a full-blown legal earthquake when, under strict anonymity, a staffer allegedly leaked internal judicial documents suggesting that Judge Michaels had quietly dismissed 3 of Justin Baldoni's key claims, without ever granting a hearing. No oral arguments, no deliberation, just gone. One of the buried claims reportedly sought access to communications between Blake Lively and NBC reporter Kat Tenbarge, emails that could have completely reshaped the public narrative. Yet those records mysteriously vanished from the docket, as if they had never existed. Outside the courtroom, the silence didn't last. Within 48 hours, TikTok exploded. A prominent legal content creator dissected every early decision Judge Michaels had made in the case, uncovering a chilling pattern. 92% of his rulings favored Blake's team. Not 60%, not 75%, 92%. The imbalance was so glaring that even casual viewers couldn't ignore it. Videos went viral, duets multiplied, hashtags trended, and what once lived in the shadows of courthouse whispers transformed into a national debate. Was Blake Lively's celebrity privilege being baked into the justice system itself? Commentators across social media and legal forums pointed out the obvious disparities. Ordinary litigants don't get to relocate depositions, see evidence vanish without hearings, or enjoy such statistically one-sided rulings. And yet here it was, unfolding in real time, under the blinding spotlight of fame. Friedman's relentless filings, the leaked internal documents, and the viral TikTok breakdowns all converged into one unavoidable truth. This case had outgrown its Hollywood headlines. It wasn't just about Blake Lively's scandal or Justin Baldoni's defense anymore. It had become a referendum on the justice system itself, one that seemed to be bending so far toward power and privilege that it was on the verge of breaking. And as the revelation spread, public outrage ignited. The illusion of fair process had been shattered. What once looked like courtroom procedure now looked like quiet corruption. And the people weren't just watching anymore. They were furious. The court of public opinion crashed in like a tidal wave, accomplishing in 24 hours what no attorney had. More than one. 2 million signatures flooded a petition demanding a full judicial ethics probe into Judge Michael's rulings, financial ties, and his handling of the Lively case. Overnight, people who'd never seen a deposition began dissecting procedure, citing civil codes, and demanding transparency. Celebrities, legal scholars, and 2 former prosecutors amplified the outrage into a movement that declared the system not merely flawed, but compromised. Justin Baldoni became the emblem of that fight against a justice system tainted by privilege and influence. While Blake's team scrambled to defend optics, Baldoni's lawyers struck with surgical precision, filing, within hours, a motion to reopen discovery that alleged bribery, leaked communications, and deliberate media manipulation by Blake's PR operation, and demanding a full reset, reopen the files, re-examine the evidence, and retrace every step Judge Michaels had touched. Their motion accused the court of procedural bias and evidence suppression, claiming the entire case was structurally compromised. It demanded a forensic review of every email, motion, and communication exchanged between the court and Blake's counsel from the very beginning. Behind the scenes, the situation escalated dramatically when TMZ and Deadline quietly confirmed that an internal judicial investigation had been initiated. Judge Michaels' office was now under review, not because of rumors, but due to digital irregularities flagged by the judiciary's own systems. Lockdown protocols were triggered, files were sealed, and clerks were ordered to silence. The same judge who had once granted Blake's requests as if they were red carpet privileges now found himself under the scrutiny of the very institution he represented. What began as a celebrity lawsuit had evolved into something much larger, a referendum on the integrity of the judicial bench itself. Inside the courtroom, the power dynamic shifted sharply, and Blake's team felt it immediately. Attorney Stephanie Jones, typically poised and camera-ready, appeared visibly shaken as she hurried to file an emergency gag order against Baldoni's camp, her voice trembling as she accused Justin of tainting the narrative. But the courtroom wasn't buying it. After weeks of leaks, viral petitions, public protests, and damning Instagram revelations, trust was long gone. Her motion wasn't about justice. It was a desperate effort to plug holes in a ship already sinking under the weight of its own deceit. With panic spilling beyond the courthouse walls, Blake's team scrambled for control. They issued subpoenas to several YouTubers covering the scandal, creators with millions of followers and no corporate censors, unlike traditional journalists bound by networks. But the move backfired instantly, igniting an even fiercer wave of backlash that made one thing clear. The narrative was no longer theirs to control. Most of the creators refused to comply, citing First Amendment protections and accusing Blake's team of weaponizing the legal system to silence public scrutiny. One creator went a step further, posting the subpoena online with a defiant caption, "She can't handle the truth." Within hours, it spread across platforms and began trending worldwide. Instead of suppressing criticism, Blake's team had amplified it, dragging influencers into the spotlight and reinforcing the perception that her camp feared transparency more than tough questions. The image of a Hollywood star trying to muzzle ordinary voices only deepened public belief in a narrative of corruption, bias, and systemic privilege. And if the court of law hesitated, the court of public opinion seemed more than ready to deliver its own verdict. The truth was out, and Blake's attempt to sue it into silence had spectacularly backfired. Cracks within her inner circle widened fast. Whispers turned into headlines when rumors emerged that Ryan Reynolds had quietly withdrawn financial support from her legal team, distancing his carefully managed brand from her spiraling controversy. He hadn't been seen at court, hadn't posted a single word of support, and, according to insiders, had refused to approve a second round of litigation funding, his silence speaking louder than any statement. The Lively camp was no longer just under fire. It was suddenly underfunded. And in Hollywood, when reputations start to burn, the wolves of crisis PR inevitably appear. Enter Adele Sharon Crane, a notorious fixer firm known for salvaging scandals too toxic for traditional spin. They quickly released a polished statement, dismissing the bribery allegations as baseless conspiracy theories fueled by social media hysteria. But the internet wasn't fooled. The polished denial only added fuel to the blaze, as public trust eroded even further, and the narrative continued to slip beyond Blake's control. Receipts were already circulating, timelines already dissected, and every talking point from Adele Sharon Crane's firm sounded less like reassurance and more like gaslighting. Instead of clearing Blake's name, the statements made her appear cornered and desperate. This wasn't a defense. It was damage control, a futile attempt to suppress outrage that had already broken past every barrier. Then, the fallout spread even further when the very people sworn to analyze the law began to rebel. Two senior legal analysts at Court TV abruptly resigned, citing direct network pressure to avoid mentioning the bribery allegations. One of them, posting anonymously on a legal forum, wrote chillingly, "When truth is inconvenient, they tell us to change the subject." The revelation sent shockwaves through media circles, exposing just how deeply influence and fear had seeped into supposedly impartial institutions. Their departures turned the story from a celebrity scandal into a systemic crisis, one too big to sanitize, too dangerous to ignore, and too revealing for those who once sought to protect it. By July 22nd, silence was no longer an option. Justin Baldoni's team dropped their most explosive filing yet.